We'll start
Right.
recording right now, do an introduction. Good morning, Griffin. This is Claudio calling you from DC. Let's make a formal introduction for our listeners from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Rayford Griffin accepted our invitation to our show. Rayford is internationally respected as among the most inventive, volcanic, and versatile drummers in the world. Rayford, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Claudia. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, man. Very happy to talk to you. Tell me, with the pandemic and people died, COVID that doesn't going to go away. Unfortunately, how is this affecting your creativity? Now you cannot tour. You still.
Yeah, there's not a lot of touring going on, at least for me anyway. Last year I was sort of scheduled to do some stuff with Jon Anderson, who I've been working with for the last few years, who I met through Jean-Luc about 5 years ago. Jean-Luc was considering, I think, earlier in the year, last year, doing some touring too, but by March, all that stuff was off the table. So right now, I do some things in my studio, some drum tracks for people. I'm producing a song for someone right now. But work-wise, yeah, it's nothing like what it used to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, man, it's difficult. Do you teach as well at home or no?
I used to. I haven't been teaching so much in the last few years. I was teaching a little bit, and then I got really busy on the road, so I couldn't continue.
Gotcha. Were you born like in a musical family, and how old were you when you began playing drums?
Yeah, well, my mother was a singer. She was a music major at Howard University, and she sang classical. My father was a minister. So by the time I was born, I was the youngest of 4 boys initially. And my mother was singing at church, at my father's church. And her brother was jazz trumpeter Clifford Brown. Yeah. So there was always a lot of music, going on in the house, jazz and contemporary music. And then as my brothers and I got older, R&B, and I have another brother who worked at the radio station. So it was an R&B station, but he would always bring home all the jazz records that the station got. So between he and my brother Reggie, I've heard pretty much everything. I think my brother Reggie brought home Mahavishnu Orchestra in the early 70s. Yeah. And, I heard Jean-Luc then, had no idea that, years later I'd be playing with him.
Yeah. Do you remember the first record that you bought on your own? Or, your older brother were bringing everything home. So
yeah.
You were listening to all the good stuff.
I think the first one I bought on my own was either, it might have been Return to Forever or a Billy Cobham record. It was probably a Billy Cobham record, because I got familiar with Billy from Mahavishnu, and then when he started making records on his own, I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Spectrum.
I got you. And you began playing, right? Learning and taking classes when you were in middle school and high school as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think 7th grade, I started taking private lessons with a guy named Tom Akins, who was the principal timpanist with the symphony orchestra in Indianapolis. And he wasn't a drum set player, but as far as reading was concerned and technique, he had all that stuff together. So that's where I learned. That's where I learned everything other than what I just absorbed from listening to records.
I got you. And then do you remember the first band that you were part of?
The very first band, oh man, I wish I had a picture. Maybe I can send it to you later. First band was what do we call ourselves? I think we called ourselves the Fabulous Four.
Wow.
And it was me. It was myself on drums, my brother Reggie on saxophone, and 2 neighbor kids, My brother played alto. The other kid played tenor, and another friend of ours played trumpet. And I was 10 years old at the time, and all I had was a marching field drum. So marching field drum, saxophone, trumpet, and tenor.
Wow, man. What about that? And then that lasted for what? A couple of years?
We played at a flower show for
Sure.
the trumpet player's mother. I think that was the only gig we did. And but my brother and I both kept playing after that. And I didn't get a drum set till I was around 13.
I got you. Did any of your older brother, end up as a musician like yourself? Or?
Oh yeah. He was nominated for a Grammy for "I Feel for You," the Shaka Khan song. "I Feel for You." He did the arrangement on that and played guitar and some keyboards. And he also used to work at Sugar Hill Records, which was one of the original rap labels back in the 80s. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I mean, there's countless songs that he was producer on, musician on, engineer, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that song that you mentioned for Chaka Khan is very, very famous, man.
Oh yeah. There's a producer named Arif Martin who used to work at Atlantic in New York City. So I think in the early 80s, Arif was looking for a young kid who had his finger on the pulse of what was happening at the time. And he picked my brother. And they ended up working on a lot of records together.
That's beautiful, man. And then you put together the fusion group called Merging Traffic. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's really interesting because Merging Traffic, that was a band that I was in that to some degree was a catalyst for where I ended up.
Correct.
But the first time I saw that band, I was 10 years old. We had just moved back to Indianapolis, which is my hometown, when I was 10 years old, and Merging Traffic was playing. I think they had a different name, but it was the same guys. It was a trio, a jazz trio, straight ahead.
Yeah.
And the drummer was a guy named Paul Hines. And we went to the church of a friend of my father's, and they were having a fundraiser or some kind of thing going on, and this band was playing. I saw these, drummer Paul Hines playing, which was like, oh man, that's really cool. And I didn't even own a drum set at the time. So fast forward some years, and I was playing in bands around town and met Paul in different situations, and he became sort of a mentor. Then in the late 80s, actually late 70s, he decided to move to California. So when he was going to move to California, he asked me to take his place in Merging Traffic, which I did. And Paul ended up coming out here, and he played on records with Tina Marie and a whole bunch of people, a lot of R&B groups. And I took his place in Merging Traffic. And one of our first gigs when I got in the band was opening for Jean-Luc.
Wow,
Like that was in 1977. Yeah.
I think Jean-Luc released Aurora in 75. So you were like some year later in the band after that, right? So
Yeah.
And then so then I think you feel free to tell the story, but I think Jean-Luc Ponty began. I think you were opening for them, and then here you playing. How that?
Yeah. Well, the band Merging Traffic. We're from Indianapolis, and I think there was a show in Columbus. It wasn't in our hometown. But anyway, we ended up opening up the show for Jean-Luc Ponty, and you heard me play that one time. And then the following year he came back and we opened up for him again in 78. I think he came to town in 79. We didn't open the show that time. but we had already sort of spoken and he was aware of me. So in '79, I went to the show and we talked and exchanged contact information. And he said, you know, you should send me a tape, you know. I was like, okay. So I actually ended up going in the studio myself expressly to record something to send to him. And I was already into that type of music. So the songs I recorded were original songs and they were sort of in that same vein, fusion vein, odd meter, stuff like that. So I sent him the tape, and then in 1980, by that time I had moved to Cleveland with the band, but he called my mother's house, which was the number he had, and said he was having auditions. He said, I can't fly you out here, but if you can make it out here, I'll leave an audition slot open for you. So I ended up flying out and did the audition, and you know, the rest is, they say, is history.
You remember how many people were part of the audition when you?
I really don't know, you know, because I had never done anything like that before. You know, I was in my hometown where all the musicians knew each other. So, you know, if you were playing in different bands, it was all with, you know, people you knew or went to high school with or something, you know, it was all familiar. So I'd never, ever done an audition in my life. So I remember sitting out, it was a place in Burbank out here, a studio. I think the studio was owned by the rock band Supertramp. But I was sitting out in the sort of lobby area and I could hear through the wall these other drummers playing. And I'm like, oh man, oh boy. You know, I'm just nervous, you know, kid from Indiana, I don't know what's going on. So it's finally my turn. I go in, get set up, and we play. And at the time, Randy Jackson was the bass player. And Randy used to play with Billy Cobham, I think prior to playing with Jean-Luc. And I was so much of a Billy fan that when we played together, there were a lot of the same sensibilities, you know, between bass and drums. We just kind of hit it off. And I remember one time we took a break in the audition, Jean-Luc said, have you guys played together before? And Randy was like, no. And I was like, no. But he asked that just because we've kind of locked up and it just, you know, we're doing some interesting things together.
Sure.
So, you know, the audition was over. I went home. I was staying at my aunt's house for the audition. And he called, I think he called that night and said he was, you know, listening to the recordings and he's going to make a decision, you know, that evening or in the morning. And, you know, I said, yeah, okay. I said, okay. I said, well, you know, I just want to say I was really nervous. I just want to say I was really nervous. In other words, I could play better than that, but I was so nervous, you know, I was kind of choked up. And he said, everyone was nervous. And I was like, oh, shoot, that's not going to buy me anything. But then, if I remember right, I think he called back later that night and said that, you know, if I wanted the gig, it was mine. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And you, I'm quite sure you went to celebrate the night, man.
What's that?
You went to drink beer or wine that night. You know, you got drunk that night, you know.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I mean,
and you were with him from 81 to 87, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You guys were touring a lot at the time, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, there'll be a tour every year, you know, sometimes. I mean, it really wasn't, we weren't like touring all year long, but almost every year there was an album to record and a tour to do. So that was pretty cool. And in between that, I was doing other stuff, doing recordings with other people. But, you know, Jean-Luc was my primary
Source of income.
Gig.
And then how many gigs were you guys doing a year? Like 30, 40?
You know, we generally do, if I remember right, it was rarely more than 2 months. Yeah. And sometimes it might be broken up, you know, broken up. I remember one year we did the US and then we went to Europe for a while too.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a whole lot, because during that same time, I was actually doing some work with Stanley Clarke individually, and George Duke individually, and with Clark Duke, which was a group that they had together. So there was a lot going on in those days.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite sure you. Yeah. I don't know. You were you. Yeah. You were. I don't know if Jean-Luc Ponty was touring to South America at the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mostly. Yeah.
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 19. Well, that was 88. Yeah, that was a little bit later on. No, I take that back. The first time was we went to Brazil in 1980.
Yeah.
When I first got in the band, even before I had done any recording with him.
Yeah.
Because when I joined the band, he had just finished the album Civilized Evil.
Yeah.
And I think Mark Craney played on that record. And then some other job came up with Mark with, who was it? I can't remember what band it was. But I think Mark left the group and I came in to do the tour for the Civilized Evil album. And then we didn't record Mystical Adventures until the next year.
Mystical Adventure. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. That's a very good album. Yeah.
Yeah, but 1980 we went to South America.
Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Chile.
Okay.
And I came here to study after high school or so. And he loved playing there.
Yeah.
You guys did very, very well, at the time.
Yeah, 1988. As a matter of fact, just yesterday I found a cassette tape, Estadio Chile.
Really?
I was listening to.
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, he mentioned yesterday when I talked to him that he thought about buying a house and in the north of Chile. Chile, remember, is very, very long. So
Yeah.
the north is very different from the south, right?
Mm-hmm.
He liked it there. And yeah, he also, he's Jean-Luc mentioned that he's semi-retired, but I don't know, he want to still keep on playing a little bit. No, not 30 gigs a year, but maybe do 10, 15. And the daughter, Clara, she's also very, very famous too. So you gotta have some fun stories, man, between 81 and 87. If you don't mind sharing some of the crazy stuff that happened a year.
Let's see. Well, one thing early on when I was playing with Jean-Luc, like I said, and this is like a lot of people don't know this. Well, I was playing with Jean-Luc, the years you mentioned, and I was also doing some work with Stanley Clarke and George Duke.
Yeah.
And I think I started working with them around 80. It might have been 82 or 83. I can't remember. But when my first tour with Jean-Luc, we played in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Place called the Santa Monica Civic in Santa Monica, California. And it was my first tour, my first time playing in Los Angeles. And we played the show, and then backstage in the green room, it was like a dream for me, because it was like my entire record collection had come to life and was walking around the room. So that's where I met Stanley Clarke, and I see George Duke comes in, and Hubert Laws walks in, and Jeff Lorber, and I'm just like, I have all these guys' records. I was listening to them in my room like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, wow.
And it just blew my mind. And, within the next year and a half, some of those people started, reaching out to me to play with them and things like that. So, like I said, I was working with Stanley and George, and during the time I was working with Stanley, he said, "You know what, Rayford? When we saw you at Santa Monica Civic, me and George were like, oh man, that guy," because they were getting ready to do a Clark Duke tour. He said, "We need to get that guy." And he said, they called Jean-Luc to try to get my contact information, and Jean-Luc wouldn't give it to him.
Wow. So
I
that's
didn't
a
know
good
about.
thing, I suppose. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it was just funny at that point. And I didn't find that out till years later. He said, "Yeah, we're trying to get you," but Jean-Luc was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not giving you his number."
That was before, you know, cell phone, before email, internet. So it was hard to get a hold of people at the time, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you didn't have the numbers, yeah, couldn't look it up online or hit them on Facebook or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, man, were you? Remember the first show? Were you very nervous? The first gig that you guys did together.
Uh,
That
I'm
was
trying to think.
that was before that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what if the first gig. I think the first thing might have been when we went to South America, and actually I don't remember really being that nervous.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of the rapport I had with Jean-Luc and with Randy, and you know, I was just kind of accepted, like, okay, you're the guy, and you know, Jean-Luc would give instructions about what he wanted to happen or what he didn't want to happen, and you know, if you did that, then everything was fine. So
Yeah.
actually felt pretty at home.
Yeah. Some musicians are very strict, right? In the solos that you do, or in the dress code that you need. You know, you need to wear like I don't know, King Crimson, for example. You need to wear like a tie and a white shirt, and
Yeah.
other people
Yeah.
are more relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it depends on the gig. You know, I've done some pop gigs and used to play with Anita Baker. You know, we wore tuxedos one year, and then she had these outfits made for us the following year. So yeah, you know, everybody's got their different thing. But also Jean-Luc was one of the first, well, he was the first major artist I ever played with, but the nature of his music and the nature of his shows, and it had always been that way, was that, you know, there's an extended drum solo at some point in the show. So that was like one of the greatest things for me, you know, just, okay, you're solo, everybody leaves the stage, do what you want to do to a degree, as long as you want to, as long as you don't get abusive with it.
Yeah.
You know?
What 7-8 minutes or something like that? Or?
Yeah. I mean, later in later years, I'd do 10, 12 minutes, whatever. It was like,
The guy went back, get a cup of coffee, a beer, eat something,
yeah, exactly.
go to the bathroom, then come back.
Yeah.
So now when you're doing a solo, you pretty much improvise, or you it's standard what you do in the solo.
There are certain things, and I think a lot of contemporary jazz musicians. I mean, like if you go see Stanley Clarke, he's going to solo. It's going to be improvised, but there's certain things that are Stanley Clarke things that he's going to do.
Yeah.
And it's the same with me. It's like the entire solo, it'll never be the same twice, but there are certain things that I do that you may hear in different solos. And to a degree, it's also somewhat artist specific. Because if I'm playing a different type of music, I'm going to play a different type of solo. But with Jean-Luc, and I worked with him so long, there were certain things that I would always insert into that solo because they were sort of work with that genre of what we were doing.
More jazz and more rock than doing it with Anita Baker or doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then after that came, what were you doing? That was 81 to 87. And then you began touring with Anita Baker in 95. What would you do? What would you did in 87 to 95?
Well, actually, the first tour with Anita was it was actually in 88.
Oh, I got you, right after, yeah.
Because we went to South America with Jean-Luc in 88. And then I'm not sure what part of the year it was, but like I said, I'd been working with George Duke, and George Duke called me one day and said, "Hey, Rayford, I'm producing some stuff with Anita Baker, and she wanted me to put a band together." And it's like, "You want to do it?" And I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Why not?
Yeah. So, the first tour was in 88. So with Anita, I worked with her 88. She didn't tour in 89. We toured in 90. Then she didn't tour again until 95. So those are the 3 years that I worked with her. And in between, there was all kinds of other stuff. I was doing stuff with Jeff Lorber and I think with Natalie Cole briefly. You know, if I don't have it in front of me, I don't even remember. And sometimes people will tell me, hey man, I saw you on this show with, you know, this person. I'm like, really? Or they'll tell me about a recording I played on, and I'm like, you sure it was me?
Yeah, it has the record right here, man. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Now remember.
Right.
You did something for, I think, Michael Jackson for 80 something, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, you know, I've been blessed to know people. Well, I mean, it's just like anything else. If I was a banker, I'd know other bankers and people in that business. So there was a guy I worked with, there's a sax player named George Howard. And I worked with him for a number of years too. Soprano sax player, used to be on MCA Records and later GRP Records. I ended up co-producing one record with him. But he had a programmer, keyboard programmer. You know, in those days, a lot of times you'd have a guy who'd come in and get the sounds that you want for your record, you know, on keyboards and things like that. And this guy also had a studio. His name was Brad Buxer. So we worked together with George for 4 or 5 years, maybe. And then later on, he became Michael Jackson's MD. And Ricky Lawson had been playing with Michael Jackson. And then I think Michael wasn't doing a whole lot at the time, and Ricky ended up taking a job with Steely Dan, and they were going to tour the world for a year or something like that. So once again, Brad Buxer, MD, called me and said, hey, Rayford, Ricky can't do Michael, he's got this tour coming up, and you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, I want to do it.
Yes,
So as opposed to, you know, having to audition for Anita or audition for Michael, you know, it was just kind of like, do you want to do this gig? I said, yeah, I want to do it. And then I was doing it.
They knew you were playing for that many years, you know, you were getting popular, so no need to audition for any of that stuff.
And as a matter of fact, after Jean-Luc, I think most of the jobs that I did audition for, I never got. Really? I remember auditioning for Shaka once, didn't get it. I auditioned for Patty Austin, singer, didn't get it. Who else? There were a few of them that I didn't get, but at the same time, I would just get calls and say, hey, you want to do this gig?
Yeah.
So, you know, it all balanced out.
And then when you know, when you do a gig or a 3-month tour, you know, they give you good money for that, whatever, 30 gigs, and you need to make it last longer because you don't know when you're going to be, you know, coming home or getting to another band or so.
Yeah,
they pay us a good amount of money, but you need to, you know,
yeah,
invest it, make it last, man, right?
It's pretty amazing. You know, there's some groups. I used to have friends who had been in bands for like 10, 15 years with the same artist, you know, and the same artist who worked relatively consistently. Yeah, I've never done that. Jean-Luc was the only artist that I've worked with for the number of years that I did. But even so, that wasn't, you know, all the time where that's your bread and butter. So, you know, if you're, I don't know if it's lucky, I don't know what the criteria is, but luckily for me, you know, when I finish one thing, there might be a little lull, but something else would always come up, or I'd seek out something and, you know, I'd always end up in a different situation. And then there were times where you're trying to figure out, okay, this thing starts from June to July, but this other one starts at the end of July, and you have to make these hard choices of, do I do this gig or do I do that gig? Because I can't do both because they overlap, or things like that. So it's pretty interesting. And, you know, I've unlike somebody who goes to a 9-to-5 and works the same job all the time, I rarely know in the course of a year what my year is going to look like financially, but somehow it always works out.
It's you know, some depend. I assume that depending on the artist, you know, how many tours you do, you know, how many people are going to be the particular artist. I think you guys work at a percentage to see if it's competing for you or not, right? So
Yeah.
and and it's tough when you're married and have a family and kids, you know, leaving and then coming back home in 2 months from now. It's not this, you know, it's easy for me. I go and see you with the band, I drink my beer, and I go home, right? But you guys go to, you know, finish at 11, drink a beer, you cannot fall asleep because you're wired up. You go up to a bath, sleep at a hotel, and then 7 o'clock in the morning, either, you know, get to a hotel or catch a flight somewhere else. It's not a glamorous life, you know, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, you know, I always say it's the life I chose and the life that chose me. Because I always felt like it chose me because I didn't have a choice to a degree in doing it. It was like, oh man, I have to do this. This is what I'm going to do. I have to, you know.
Yeah. When you decided that music was your thing, right? Early?
I think I knew when I was in grade school.
Really?
Yeah, like I said, my uncle was Clifford Brown, jazz trumpet player.
Yeah.
And there was always a picture of him on the mantle in my house. And we used to listen to his records. So the idea of being a musician, it wasn't like a far-fetched thing for me. And, you know, like I said, my mother sang, my oldest brother, Robert, when I was maybe 6 or 7, he was the first one to be in a group. We used to live in Houston, Texas, and he was in a group called Wali and the Afro Caravan. And he played congas, and it was a lot of African percussion and a singer and stuff like that. So just the idea of being a musician wasn't some far-fetched thing that, you know, was unattainable. So like I said, I think I knew when I was in grade school, it's like, oh, I think that's what I want to do. I want to play drums and that's what I want to do. So.
And you got the encouragement of your dad, your mom, you know, go for it. And
yeah, my mother in particular was because she was a music major and because of her brother, she got me drum lessons when I was 10. I got my first drum when I was 10. Played in, you know, grade school. And then I didn't take private lessons until I was about 13.
So you the first 2 years you pretty much began on your own?
Originally, because I just had a field drum, so I played traditional grip.
Yeah.
But then when I got a drum set, actually before I got a drum set, my brother's band, when we moved back to Indianapolis, my brother started playing in bands, and I'd go to rehearsals sometimes. And one time the drummer let me sit down on his drums, and it was a old 3-piece kit with one rack tom here, a ride cymbal on the bass drum, and a floor tom. And I sat down to play, and the first thing I did was switch my left hand to the ride cymbal, which was on the right, and I played like that. You know, so I don't know why I did that, but it was just kind of the natural thing for me to do. So when I actually got a drum set, I ended up playing left-handed instead of right-handed. Although when I used to go to my lesson, my teacher, I played my lesson right-handed because he was from the symphony orchestra, and he was, traditional. This is the way you play traditional grip. You play the drums like that, and you know, everything. So I would go to my lesson and play that way. Then when I went home and played gigs, I would play match grip. And then finally I would kind of talk to him about it. You know, I really want to play this way. And he'd say, no, no. And then finally I convinced him. He said, okay, well, go ahead, play your lesson, play your lesson match grip, left-handed. And I did that. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you know, you should play that way.
Yeah.
And he told me years later, he said that I kind of opened up his mind to teaching students the way that they need to be taught, as opposed to, you know, the strict, it only has to be like this and nothing else.
Yeah, wow, man. And then after that, from 97 to what? To 2000, you were with the Isley Brothers, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, 96, I was with the Ozzie Brothers. I think prior to that, though, after Michael Jackson, I did a little, it was very short, but I did a little stint with Bette Midler.
Oh, wow.
And we recorded this HBO show called Diva Las Vegas. Just a one concert performance. We did that in Vegas that year. And it's funny how when you're in something, when you're really immersed in something, you don't realize how much work it is until after the fact. At least I didn't. I listened to some of that stuff later. I was like, that was a lot of information that we were playing up there, you know? But when you're in it, you're just in it and you get it done. But also I saw that show recently. I think I have it on a DVD or something. And I was watching, I was like, we were playing a lot of stuff. So yeah, I was with Bette for a little while, and then Isley Brothers for, yeah, about 4 years actually.
Man. So before you go into Isley, it's difficult to learn going from Anita Baker to Bette Midler to the Isley Brother, learn new things, learn the repertoire, adjusting to the personality of the people, or it's easy or
I mean, for me, I don't know, it's always been relatively easy. And I don't know if it was something that my mother ingrained in me when I was younger, but when I first started playing, like when I was in high school, and my mother would see me play, or I'd be playing some high school concert or something, and I played timpani in high school too. But my mother would say, oh, Rayford can play anything, meaning I could play any style of music, you know. And you know, I don't know if it was something she noticed or just she was just being a mother and saying that kind of thing. But as I got older and got in all these different situations, I don't know, it just came kind of easy to me. I think if you can hear it and notice what the essence of whatever that music is that makes it different from, if you can notice what makes Bette's music different from Isley Brothers music and hone in on that, then, you know, you pretty much got it covered. And at the end of the day, it's all music. It's just about how you approach it and what the sensibilities of that particular genre are.
And then every bit in between. So when you know you got the deal with the Isley Brother or with Anita Baker, it's a lot of rehearsing that you guys do with the band, like a month before or a week or. Some people like to rehearse, some people don't.
Yeah, no. Anita, yeah, with Anita, we rehearsed a lot, especially the first tour. I think she had sold like, I don't know, 3-4 million records, and it was going to be a big tour. She was headlining. We were doing like arena shows. Wow. So yeah, we rehearsed a long time, maybe at least 3 weeks, if I remember right. Close to a month, I'm not sure. But conversely, if I remember right, my first gig with the Ozzie Brothers was a last minute thing where somebody was supposed to do it. They couldn't do it. I got a call like on I don't know if it was that morning or the night before. It's like, hey, we got this show and such,
The guy is
somebody was
sick or
supposed to
whatever.
do it, they can't do it. Can you do it? Are you available? Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna leave, tomorrow. I just remember getting on a plane and listening to a cassette with the bass player and writing notes, and he's telling me what we're supposed to do. And I'd never even played with him before. It's just like, I'm on a plane going to the gig and learning the show. So, and I think after that, that's when I started working with him.
Wow. How but gotta be difficult, that, man.
Well, I mean, it helps when you have some kind of idea of what the music is about. And, for me, I used to listen to him when I was, a teenager. So the hits I already knew. Some of the new stuff I wasn't that familiar with, but you knew what the vibe was and you knew how some of the music went. So the rest was just, okay, do this here and do that there. And then just the sensibilities of knowing how to play with a group, when to be quiet, when to be loud. And for me, I always, whoever the artist is, my eyes rarely come off the artist, because they're going to let you know pretty much what you need to be doing.
When it's your turn to shine.
Well, not even so much that, but just in the course of the music, based on the way that they're singing, based on the body language,
yeah,
you can tell what, if you should be aggressive or if you should be more laid back, or if you should be loud or quiet. And it's not like they're giving you individual personal instruction.
Yeah.
It's just reading the body language of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know where I got that from, but I've just always done it.
And then when you go to one to band, they provide like a standard drum set, or you bring your own?
Well, it depends on the situation. With the Isley Brothers, we were one tour we were, few tours we were just using backline equipment, equipment provided by the promoters. But another tour, we took all our own gear. So it just depends on how they budget everything and what's best for the artist to do.
Yeah. Wow. And then you and your brother Reggie, I think, began working before you have that accident. You began working your first CD. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I started it, and then I had my accident, and then we finished it after. And at the time, he was living here in California with me, and we built the studio. And the studio I'm sitting in, Wally Minko, keyboard player with Jean-Luc, he built this studio. He built this place. So it was like, there was a garage here, but all the interior and the soundproofing and everything, he built pretty much by himself.
But you hired for him to do, or you bought the house from him?
No, I already had the house, but I hired him to
help you out.
Yeah, he was into construction and stuff like that. And, we were talking, and he's like, "Oh man, you should let me build the studio." And I was like, "Okay, sure."
Go for it, man.
And he pretty much did it himself. It's pretty amazing. And I ended up, my first record, we recorded just about everything here.
Wow. Yeah, Wally. Yeah, I never talked to him. Also, I want to interview him, but he seemed like a very nice person. Quiet, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a nice guy, man.
Yeah.
Yes, I may have met some musicians that they're crazy, man. After the gig, there are two different people,
Yeah.
Like Jean-Luc was the person I have seen and met over the year, the same guy that I sort of interviewed yesterday. But there can be other people that are very different. In real life, it's very different for the person that I saw playing the keyboard or guitar.
Yeah.
And somehow I don't know why, but I have interview a lot of drummers, man. Simon Phillips from Toto, used to be
Yeah.
with Toto. Then from Pan Metheny, Paul Vertigo, Antonio Sanchez. All the drummers are very nice people. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, it's
Jamie's
well, not,
playing. Jamie, for example, is
what's that?
Jamie
Uh-huh.
is a very different person. Yeah, I mean, it's his personality, and he tells joke in the interview. He's a nice guy. He's different. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
And but very good people. And then with the accident, obviously we don't want to go in detail, but you were out for like a couple of years, right? Or a year and a half.
Strangely enough, it wasn't that long. It was I broke my back in September of 2000.
Yeah.
And I was in a wheelchair at first. I couldn't walk at all.
Yeah.
And doing physical therapy and stuff. Then it was crutches for a while. And I still had a back brace I had to wear. Then it was a cane that I used for a while. And like I said, my brother was living here with me. I had the accident in September. I actually got married in December. So between September and December, I was actually up kind of moving around again, but I was still using a cane. And I remember one day I knew I wanted to play, and I didn't know when to do it based on my recovery. I didn't have any particular date in my mind or anything like that. I still had the back brace. By then I was using the cane. I could get around with the cane, but I still had to wear a back brace. And one day I decided, I said, I think I'm gonna go and try to play today. And my brother was here and he was in the control room. And I went in the studio. I sat down behind the drums. And I remember I hit the bass drum with my foot, and it was like, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, it was like really loud, louder than it had been before the accident. And then I realized, oh, I've been doing all this physical therapy because they had me, laying down, pushing weights with my legs and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So in some ways I was stronger than I was before the accident.
Yeah.
So, so I sat down and I played, and, everything kind of came back. It was a little awkward because I had this big hard plastic back brace from here all the way down to my waist. But, I realized, okay, I can still play. So once I get this thing off and get stronger, then I should be all right.
Yeah. Any stories with the Isley Brothers that you can tell that we'll record without regretting it later?
Wow, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of a wild ride, really. I mean, when you think about it, because even on stage, he would say, I think shout, he wrote shout, you make me want to shout. He wrote that. So many other groups recorded that song, but he wrote that in 1959.
Wow.
And you think about it, it's like, man, this cat has been playing major shows since 1959. So that in itself used to just kind of trip me out. But Ronald he was very cool. When I first got in the band, it was Ronald Isley, the lead singer, Ernie Isley on guitar, and their brother Marvin was playing bass. But between 96 and 2000, when I stopped doing it, I think Marvin took ill and he stopped playing. There was somebody else playing bass, and but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun because every song was a hit.
Oh yeah.
And we're doing great shows. They had dancers, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, quite sure that I don't know how many of the original Isley Brothers they're alive. But those guys financially did very well. They have too many, too many #1 hits or so,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
year. So they're not poor.
No, no, I'm doing okay.
They're doing all right, and they don't, it's and then after that you did it, release your first CD, right? It's called, it was Reverse of the Cool, right?
Yeah, Rebirth of Cool was yeah, that was like 2003, I think. Yeah. And some of the songs I'd written a few years prior, and some of them I wrote, specifically for the record. Yeah, Jamie's on one song that I'd written a few years earlier, a song called Every Time I See You.
Yeah.
Kind of a sort of pop rock ballad kind of thing.
Pop
rock jazz ballad.
Yeah, I get you. You know what it just occurred to me now that you mentioned Jamie, and once I get a hold of Wally, we should do like an interview and bring the lineup, bring
Yeah.
Jamie, Wally, and yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy who played bass.
Baron Brown was the original when I got in. Well, no, Randy Jackson was playing when I first got in Jean-Luc's band, but he only did one tour. Then it was Baron Brown.
Was the one for 218. The last time you
again?
guys played together. The last time I saw you was the one that you guys did.
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Was
it Keith?
Yeah, Keith was the bass.
Yeah, Keith Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Keith Jones was with us back in '82 too.
Well, invite all to follow you, man.
Yeah, man. Right? Why not? It'll be a hoot. It'll be a lot of laughing.
You guys don't talk to each other?
Yeah, we do. We do. Often, sometimes, yeah. I mean, I talked to Jamie a couple of weeks ago. I think I talked to Keith. Might have been around Christmas time, maybe. Haven't talked to Wally in a little while, but I mean, whenever we do get together, there's a lot of laughing because we all go way back, and a lot of shared experiences.
We may even call Jean-Luc Ponty, man. He gave me his not his cell number, his landline number in Paris. So
Yeah.
But of course, I don't want to use it. He was want to be respectful for the guy, but yeah, I will think about it, man. I will call Ray, Wally next, and then I will. I know that Jamie is up there, but Jamie's always working. He's doing some stuff from television, and
yeah, he's a busy guy. He's always got something going. He's always got some plates spinning.
Yeah, and then he got all the animals and rabbits and all that stuff. He take care of that. He told me that when there's no music, my animals, my guys are on camera. So and then you guys in 211, if you want to elaborate on the Anderson Ponty experience, how many gigs you guys did? Remember?
With and what?
With Jon Anderson.
Yeah, that was actually kind of cool. And once again, I used to listen to Yes when I was in high school. Fusion and progressive rock. I used to listen to all that stuff. So Jean-Luc called and said they're thinking about doing a thing with Jon Anderson, and we were gonna fly to, where did we go, to Colorado and do this recording, and do a rehearsal and then do a recording and make a record. And I don't remember how many shows we did. I think we did two separate tours, if I remember right. And Jon Anderson is, man, it's hard to describe him. I don't know what if Jamie talked about him or not, but to me, he's one of those people who is so creative. His creativity is like a waterfall. It's just like constantly going, and he can't turn it off. Not that he should, but it's just, there's always ideas. I always say, we should do this. Oh, let's try this, just constantly. And I was really impressed with his voice, man. He sounded the same way he did in the 80s.
30 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Crystal clear, and really, really interesting guy. Really interesting guy. A lot of fun to be with.
Different personalities between Jon and Jean-Luc?
Yeah. I mean, Jon is kind of like this, and Jean-Luc is just, Jean-Luc's pretty calm. So they sort of balanced each other out in the course of what we were doing,
I'm surprised that in the lineup that Ponty and Anderson put together, then all the Ponty guys, you guys, end up, touring with them. I'm surprised that Jon Anderson didn't say, "Oh yeah, no, I want my drummer, I want my piano guy."
My understanding at the time that Jean-Luc and at the time they put all of it together, I think Jon was pretty much doing solo shows, so he didn't have a band per se.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And all the Yes guys, that was a whole separate thing that he wasn't really dealing with or collaborating with at that time. So he did have he had a guitar player initially when we started the project, but the guitar player had some other TV show he was doing and a few things on his plate, and it ended up not working out for him to finish the recordings and do the tour. So that's when Jean-Luc called Jamie in. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. He didn't really have a band, so kind of ended up being Jean-Luc.
And Jamie say, "Well, I want Rayford," and then Rayford say, "I want you are like a like a gang, all the guys like an Italian mafia, If you want one, you need the other,
No, Jean-Luc put it together because the nature of the music, because we were doing some of his music and Jon Anderson's music, and realistically, he knew that we could cover whatever needed to be covered, And at the end of the day, that's really anybody who gets a gig is really about, can you do the job that needs to be done,
Plus, you've been playing with Jean-Luc for that many years that you need to only learn Jon Anderson stuff, right? Half the show you already knew, right? So
yeah.
So it wasn't that difficult to hire a new person. Man, hopefully, I can, I can get a hold of Jon Anderson. But, I would love to interview him, but I will talk to you. I will talk to you later about that. And then, how was the feeling when Jean-Luc called you to be part of the Atlantic here in 2018?
Well, that was a lot of fun too, just because for all of us, I think for Jean-Luc, Wally, I think Baron Brown did once, he did part of it, and Keith and Jamie. It was just a nostalgic kind of thing for us too. I mean, because we played all that stuff, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, one more last hurrah, let's go do it again. I mean, because we'd laugh and joke because some of the tempos of some songs that we did 30 years ago might be like, and until we got warmed up, we try to play them that fast, like, oh, okay, it's not, okay, maybe we need to slow it down a little bit. But by the time we were done touring, though, we were back at some of those 30-year tempos. Yeah.
Wow, man, that would be.
We were much younger men before.
Yeah, that's what I saw you. I saw you guys the last time in 2018. Here in you played 3 shows, and I went to 2 of the 3. In one was in Maryland. You guys did 2 in Maryland, and 1 in Virginia in the Birchmere, which is a famous place. I live like 15 minutes from the place. So
Oh yeah, I've been there many,
that
many,
that
many times.
yeah, that place is very, very famous, man. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know if for your point of view, is the acoustics are that great, but when you go outside and you see the world that everybody, all the people that have played there,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing. It's
It's a
amazing.
nice room. Always enjoy playing there. Good
Yeah.
sound man too. I can't remember his name, but I mean, I was there so much in the mid 2000s. You know, kind of had a rapport with those guys because actually I played a lot with in the early 2000s, mid 2000s with a lot of the smooth jazz guys. You know, Rick Braun, Peter White, Richard Elliott. Uh, you know, pretty much all of them, and they would always do a rotation through there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so you play with in that particular venue many with many different musicians, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a nice place and very different in the sense that they open like the doors at 6. The show always start at 7:30 and always finish by 9 or so. So you know that you can go home, get home by 10, 10:30 and go to work the day after. Other places that I go, I see close to 30, 35 shows a year
yeah,
here. And you know, sometimes they announce that the tickets that the show is at 8 and they start at 9:30,
yeah.
and my wife complained, because where are you? Well, the show hasn't started yet.
Right. 11:30,
You know,
12 o'clock. You're just getting back.
yeah, but the Bishmer, they're very, very strict, very, plus you can sit down, you can get dinner, get a beer. I love this place. If I have money, I would buy it. I mean, because have so much history at play. Feel free to elaborate now on the trumpeter composer Clifford Brown, man. I know he's a very important part of your life and your family, and
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, like I said, he was. You know, I used to listen to his music when I was. I think I remember listening to it at 4 or 5 years old. You know, my mother would play his records at home, and all through my growing up. You know, different times we listened to his music, and even before I started playing, I think there's one record called, I think it's Live at Basin Street. It has a picture of Max Roach on the front, along with my uncle, if I remember right. And there's a picture of his drums. It's like a pearl finished drum set. There's a cymbal in the shot. You can kind of see his face. I just remember looking at that picture and like seeing the drums was just like, oh, it was just like really exciting to me. And it was my uncle's records, or the Max Roach and Clifford Brown records, but the drums is the thing that stuck out to me. That's kind of what musically, that's what I latched on to more so than the trumpet, you know. So when I got the gig with Jean-Luc, I actually stayed with my aunt, thru, who was Clifford's widow, who lives in California. I stayed with her for a while. And she used to always say, you need to tell people who your uncle is, meaning in the music community in Los Angeles. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. She always say, you need to tell people who your uncle is. And I rarely would do it. But if it came up and somebody found out that he was my uncle, it's like, oh man, oh wow, Clifford Brown's your uncle. Oh man, they would just be going crazy.
they will buy you a beer, they will buy you dinner.
Right. And I sort of understood it, but at the same time, because it was a family and it was they're raving about this man whose picture has been on my mantle since I was born. I didn't really get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I was so close to it. But as I got older, it was always kind of tapping at me. It's like, man, you need to do something with his music. You need to do something with his music. And I didn't really know what to do or how to do it. And at one point, shoot, this was probably over 10 years ago, I started playing around town in LA, playing straight ahead, playing a lot of his music. And I did that for a little while and I said, this doesn't make any sense. It's like playing this stuff the way that they played it, which I'm not really doing because that was a specific time and a specific era, and what they were creating was brand new at that time, and I'm just trying to do the same thing. It just didn't make sense. So the idea came to me that, okay, I need to do something totally new and totally different with this stuff. So that was kind of the concept of the album. It's like, okay, suppose he was still alive and he said, okay, I'm going to rearrange these songs that we played in the 50s and make them more relative to today. So conceptually, that's what I did with the record. And even at first, when I was writing the arrangements, some of the stuff I came up with initially was like, that's corny. That's not going to work. You know, because I've heard people where they take a jazz standard and they put a beat, some funky beat under it and play it the same way, except it has a funky beat, and that's their arrangement. And that's always seemed kind of dumbed down and really corny to me. I was like, I don't want to do that. So over time, just these arrangements kind of just came down. It's like, oh man, that's great. I just get these ideas and I'd run with them. So when I finally put it all together, some of my criteria was like, okay, this has to be something that if he was alive and he heard it, he would be very, very pleased about it. Yeah, yeah. So that was sort of the baseline for what I did. And I recorded most of it here in my studio. Roy Hargrove, who's not with us anymore, played on Cherokee. And he came into my studio and I had already done the track and he was just overdubbing his part. So I was sitting up in the control room and he was in the studio playing, and he hit, I don't even know what note it was. He hit this one note, and when he hit that note, it was like somebody pushed the button on me and I just burst into tears.
Really?
I just started crying. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? I just started crying like, "Whoa." And after it happened, I realized that it was almost like my uncle was on that note. It's like my uncle was just riding that note and he wrote it and it came up and it got inside me. And it was kind of like my uncle said, hey, good job.
Good job, man.
You know, and I mean, I don't know, sorry.
No,
even when I talk about it, it still affects me the same way.
You know, it's important. I mean, I didn't know that much about him, and I got that from your website, and I look it up. He was very good, and there's something to be proud. You know, that,
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I know you didn't want to mention that, and it played both ways. You know, in the sense that it can open opportunity, but as a musician, you gotta be known as yourself, as Rayford, right? You know,
Yeah.
no, think about, you know, Jean-Luc Ponty, you know, Clara Ponty, right? Of course, the Ponty last name at the beginning maybe opened some door for her, but she didn't want to be associated with her dad.
Yeah.
She's Clara, she's not Jean-Luc, you know. It's the same thing like you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, your dad, your uncle is very, very popular. He was very well known, blah blah blah. But eventually, you need to those last name or you know, greeting card or business card will help you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then you need to go on your own. So, but there's nothing wrong with that. Mention that, you know, that you're part of the family. So it's a beautiful thing. Nothing to be ashamed of. Man.
Yeah. Yeah. I just you know, it was something I had to do, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out. You know.
Yeah. No. So and then you did another. You have another CD or no, or just a couple singles? No. That's the only 2 CDs you have released? No?
That's the only 2. Yeah. I
yeah.
was beginning of last year, I was going to start working on another one. And I don't know, between the pandemic and, you know, my son being out of school and for me, just the energy, the creative energy, I don't know. I couldn't find the focused headspace to write and produce another record last year. It just was too much for me. I don't know.
Plus, you know, with all the politics now and all the stuff which happened with Black people and Black Lives Matters, and it
was a lot of stuff. It almost seemed, not to take away from anybody else who's been creating music over the last year, but for me, creating some music seemed almost small compared to some of the other things that were going on and other things that that I personally had to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. And also think about with the pandemic, how many people lose their jobs, and you know, you guys, you're guys touring musicians, so you make money when you're on the road, so it's hard to make it. But how many people lost a job, and you know, it's very difficult, man, to, you know, concentrate in creating new music, going gigs, or or teaching, or you know, there are too many distractions that affected. What kind of? Yeah.
I would say I might be too sensitive because the same energy that I would create with is the same energy that I feel things with, and the feel part was so overwhelmed that the creativity kind of got pushed back. But I mean, it's not gone, and I still have a lot of stuff bouncing around in my head, and sometimes I'll sing it into a tape recorder to get out of it.
You gotta put it together, man.
Yeah.
Little by little. You know?
I'm getting there.
What kind of music do you listen to when you're working in the house or cooking or whatever, or working in the garden? What kind of stuff
you know? It could be what's the word? I don't know if it's sadly, but it's reality. I often end up listening to things from 15, 20 years ago. You know, I still listen to some Jean-Luc and old records that I used to listen to. Recently, I saw Narda Michael Walden, who I was a fan of, also has a new record out now called Mortality that he just put online, I think probably back in the fall. And I've been listening to that a little bit, but even so, it's still sort of a throwback to what he was doing in the 70s. So that, I listened to some straight ahead jazz. And it used to be that I was always listening to music that I had to learn for whatever was coming up next. And sometimes, a lot of times, it was a lot of information, a lot of music. I used to do some jazz cruises some years ago, and sometimes we'd have to learn like 70, 80 songs.
Really?
Well, we'd play for like 6 or 7 artists.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And they'd all have about, 8 or 9, 10, between 8 and 10 songs that you had to learn for each artist. So
yeah, the jazz cruises. Yeah. do you have at home a big vinyl CD collection? Or
I have a lot of vinyl, but it's been in the closet for years, and I have one record player which stopped working a decade ago or more, a couple of decades ago probably. And actually, Keith Jones gave me another record player about a year ago, but I never plugged it in just because I don't have the space to put it and the space to pull out all these records.
Well, if you keep it in the closet, it's good. Eventually, you need to start taking them out. But you listen to a lot of, do you like, for example, bands like I don't know, Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or Peter Gabriel, that kind of stuff? Or
Well, I've always liked
no much?
Sting's music. I used to have a short list of people that I never got to play with that I would have loved to play with.
Yeah,
And it was Miles Davis,
yeah, Miles Davis, yeah,
Sting,
yeah.
and Gino Vanelli.
Wow, yeah, very good, yeah.
And is that it? That might be it. I think that might be it. But yeah, I mean, back in the same era as when I was listening to Jean-Luc in the 70s, I used to love Gino Vanelli's music because it was so intricate, and there was the orchestral component and the fusion component and the pop component. It was just like, man, it's amazing. It's got it all.
Did you meet any of these guys, Miles Davis or Gino or Sting at all? No.
I met Miles once. It was a Playboy Jazz Festival out here. And, back in the days, I used to go just about every year. I don't know if I was playing that year or not, but I was hanging out with George Duke and Miles Davis was on the show. And after Miles had said, George was like, oh, come on, let's go back and say hi to Miles. So it was myself, and George, and some of the guys who played in George's band. So we go backstage, and he knocks on his trailer door, and Miles opens the door and says, "Hey, George, hey, how you doing, man?"
You do?
And so we all start going in, and you hear all these stories about Miles and what he said and what he did and all this kind of stuff. And I walked in and I said hello, and I said, I think my aunt, thru, because she knew him, my uncle's Will. I said, I think my aunt thru. She was Clifford Brown. I said, I don't know if I said I'm Clifford Brown's nephew or said that Aunt LaRue was my aunt and she was married to Clifford Brown. But I said that and he just kind of looked at me and he turned and just walked away. He turned and walked away and started talking to other people. I was like, well, what just happened? And in hindsight, which I didn't come to till years later, I think that he did that because I sort of, what's the word? I sort of tried to credit myself with being somebody, you know what I mean? Or being related to somebody that he should know or blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it was, but that's what I kind of figured out because, everybody, he knew George, everybody else just came in and said hi and that was it. But I tried to make this connection, but I think that he was like, that's unnecessary. Well. That's unnecessary. And because you did it, I'm just walking away.
Yeah. He was a character, the guy, of course. He was very good, though. Very, very good.
And his nephew is a really good friend of mine, too, Vince Wilburn, who also plays drums. He's a friend of mine. And it's funny, too, because I'm from Indianapolis originally, the home of Freddie Hubbard, trumpet player. And Freddie had a nephew who played drums in my brother's band. So
wow.
all these famous trumpet players have drumming nephews.
Have you, now that you mentioned the Sting, have you met, I think he lives in California, Stewart Copeland from the Police?
Yeah, I've met him a couple of times with Stanley,
Yeah. He's very good. Different than your style.
Yeah. I mean, he was innovative. The stuff he did with the Police was like, he opened up a door to a lot of genres that are already there that a lot of people weren't aware of, Yeah,
they did a lot of reggae with the Police, and I saw a couple interviews that he didn't want to play the backbeat. He wanted to do something different, and everybody was doing the black beat, and he say, no, I'm a spoiled brother. I don't want to do it.
Right.
I gotta give the band what they need, but without doing the back beat. And he's very good.
Yeah.
And so what are your plans for the? I have only another two questions. What are your plans for the near future, and in terms of gigs and touring? And
Well, a couple of irons in the fire. I'm not sure how they're going to pan out. There's a producer who worked on Jon Anderson's latest record.
yeah.
I was touring with Jon Anderson in 2018. Is it 18? This is 21, 20. No, 19, 2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Toured with Jon Anderson for about 16, 17 weeks we did. But his producer is working with some of the guys from the rock band Kansas. And I played on one track on a record they're doing. I think there's multiple drummers on this record. So there's some talk of doing some shows with that, but we'll see how the rest of this year goes. And aside from that, I am gonna get back to work on some music for myself. Get some recording done here.
Where can buyers, our listener can buy your music? Can they buy your stuff from your website or Amazon or any of the other?
Amazon. You can get digital downloads from CD Baby.
CD Baby, yeah.
Yeah.
Bandcamp. I don't know if you're in Bandcamp or not.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Well, man, hopefully we'll, if you're in town one day, man, Virginia, DC, my wife is a very good cook, so you will buy over with some beer, some Chilean wine, but I'm a beer type of guy.
The Chilean wine, I can get with that. I like that.
Yeah, but I have some wine upstairs, man. Yeah. Chile is so famous for wine and very good quality. It's very inexpensive. Like you can get a very good bottle for $10 or something or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a beer type of guy, but so after this recording is over, I will send to you, and you can save for your record of your social media stuff. And
all right.
But I'm thinking I want to try to get a hold of Wally, man, and then do a combo, get together the four of you, and I'm good at that kind of stuff, putting people together in awkward situations, and we may even call up Jean-Luc Ponty, man. Yeah,
we should do it. I'm sure everybody would be into it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Ray, man, it was very nice to meet you. Nice talking to you. I hope to meet you one day in person if I'm down there in California, or if you're touring here, man, in DC or Virginia. You have my number. Look me up, and then we'll get together. It was very, very nice meeting you, and good luck to you with the family and everything.
Thank you. Yeah,
hopefully we'll have a new president in 10 days or so. And things need to improve in this country, man.
Yeah, we certainly hope
enough
so.
is enough, man.
Yeah. If you're ever out this way, give me a shout, man.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely, man. Take it easy, man.
All right, thanks.
Take it easy.
Bye.